before, let's talk about the fact that President Trump used an autopen to sign all of the pardons for the January 6th insurrectionists.
On you guys, today we have the MAGA tool Dave Smith getting destroyed by progressives. Dave Smith is on the Piers Morgan panel and he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Pretty wild. It's, you know, I have no legal expertise in the question of whether these auto signatures are legitimate or are not legitimate, and it's kind of an interesting legal question, I guess. But I think you hit the nail on the head in your opening there, Piers. It's like none of this would ever, there's no way you could make this claim short of the fact that we all know the former sitting president was so senile. And this is, you know, I mean, these are the type of conversations, every single political commentator, including the four of us here and everyone you know, these are the type of conversations we were having privately throughout this whole, the whole last year, at least, of the Biden administration. I mean, when you're at this level of you know, mental decline, how much can everybody around you just abuse that? I mean, Joe Biden actually seemed at a state, at least toward the end of his administration, where a staffer could probably just tell him, oh, no, you already said that yesterday. And he'd kind of have to go, yeah, I guess I did. And then I guess the bigger question than that, which I think really does rise above a legal question, is just how outrageous it is that the outgoing president would pardon Fauci. I mean, all of us know that in this whole debacle, which, by the way, this doesn't have to be a partisan issue because Donald Trump is very implicated in this too. He was the president of the United States of America through all of 2020. He's the one who kept Fauci on the job through the year of lockdowns. But the fact that Fauci was covering up the fact that that his own, or subsidiaries of his own agency, had funded the lab where the whole thing came from, and then they covered that up and they accused everybody of being horrible racists or conspiracy theorists if they brought up the theory of where this virus originated from, and then to impose lockdowns and mandates and just lie to the American people the whole way through is one of the gravest crimes that was ever committed by the US government against the American people. And the idea that a president would give out blanket immunity for those crimes is so appalling that essentially I'm saying any way that we could undo these pardons, I support it, but it does bring up a
Right now we have Dave Smith referring to this autopen scandal. It's circulating through a few different, you know, conservative talk spaces. It's the idea that because Joe Biden used an autopen signature to pardon, you know, Anthony Fauci, Hunter Biden, and a few others, that these pardons do not matter, that the autopen makes it not you know, work anymore. And Trump's giving it light now. Trump has completely backed this idea. Trump just has, you know, he has one out for Joe Biden. He really does not care for him whatsoever. It just doesn't make sense. You use autopen on your leases. We use autopen on anything nowadays, and that shouldn't mean that these things are not, you know, withholding.
Fascinating question, and one that we talked about on a previous episode of this show, Piers. Yeah. There's questions about the Joe Biden resignation letter itself. It was such a bizarre way for a sitting president to announce a couple weeks before the convention that he wouldn't be seeking re-election. He did it through like a letter, not an address to the American people, and then he threw his endorsement to Kamala Harris through a tweet. This is just so bizarre. It's like out of a crazy fiction novel or something. But I'm excited that people are looking into this.
You know, you're so right about the Biden announcement. I was in New York, and I saw it on X, right? It just suddenly popped up that the president of the United States was effectively quitting. I was like, whoa, wait,
and Piers,
what?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just one more quick announcement. I believe I was on your show in New York City the day after this happened.
Yes, you were.
But also, it was a Sunday. That Sunday morning on the Sunday morning news shows, surrogates of the Biden campaign were going on and saying, what are you guys talking about? He's not dropping out. It's Trump versus Biden. Which one do you want? And then later that day, the president announces in this mysterious way. So bizarre.
I was actually talking to President Trump the night before, who, if you remember, had made his first rally stump appearance since the assassination attempt. And I said to him then, I think you've got this election in the bag after this because the American people are responding so well to your fight, fight, fight. And he went, you know, the one thing I've learned this year, 3 months is a long time in this election cycle. And literally within about 12 hours, Biden had resigned. All right, Julie, there's a lot to unpack from Dave's increasingly spectacular rant there, which led to, I think he was basically implying that Fauci should be in jail by now, and many people might agree with him. But Julie, this issue of the pardons, I mean, if the president wasn't cognizant enough.
Great misdirection by Dave Smith, by Piers Morgan for that matter, on, wanting to put the blame on Fauci, wanting to put the focus on Fauci. I mean, what the hell is Trump doing? He's literally undoing, and he's going against, he's really wanting to do that so he can get after the people, the January 6th committee, the ones, again, he is attacking the ones who is against him. This is fascism 101.
I appreciate that Dave is going after Fauci and relitigating 2024. Let's talk about the fact that President Trump used an autopen to sign all of the pardons for the January 6th insurrectionists who literally assaulted our Capitol and the seat of our democracy. So if you want to talk about that, is President Trump not compos mentis to sign them himself? That he used an autopen to I don't blame him for not wanting to sign his own signature to pardoning insurrectionists, but that's exactly what he didn't do. So let's look at this from a really realistic perspective. There's nothing in the Constitution that has the autopen exclusion. And President Biden is still very much alive to tell us that he, in fact, wanted and did pardon the people that he pardoned. So this whole thing is crazy. It's done to rile up the base. It's done to tie up the courts. I'm sure the Supreme Court, even the Supreme Court, is going to say this is ridiculous because autopens have been used consistently in signing documents over and over and over again in this administration, in the previous administration, in the first Trump administration. So there's no autopen exclusion to the United States Constitution. But I understand why Dave wants to talk about Anthony Fauci. He wants to talk about anything other than the fact that, of course, this president, the one we have right now, pardoned January 6th insurrectionists. And you have the temerity after that to talk about Anthony Fauci, who I think did the best he could, under very challenging circumstances. He did not pardon people who were convicted by a jury of their peers and sentenced to decades in prison for attacking the United States Capitol and putting in harm's way not just Democrats, but even Mike Pence.
But Julie, you talk about putting people in. All right, but Julie, you talk about putting people in harm's way. I mean, Anthony Fauci. All right, you say he did.
So there we have it, you guys. I mean, this is just blatant misdirection. Dave Smith is going to continue to want to get the light off of Donald Trump, want to put it on other people, want to make it Joe Biden's fault, want to make it anyone else's fault. All these domestic and foreign enemies, besides the actual dictator that we have, who is repealing all of these things, repealing all of these orders, finding any reason to not have to respect the actual system, what's going on. He's turning people against it as well. It's just, it's complete anarchy. For his side, for his team. He is completely taken over. There's no such thing as democracy. And it's not Trump's fault necessarily, but he is the one who has taken up the reins and who is now leading this movement that has nothing to do with democracy whatsoever. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.